Welcome to Section 4, Querying Tables. As usual, we begin by importing all the libraries that we need, importing PyKX's KX, and then we read in our Bitcoin CSV file into a PyKX table called tab BTC, and then create a new column upon that PyKX table called date by simply extracting the date from the timestamp in each row. So if we take a look at our PyKX table, we see all the columns available to us as well as the new date column. So the first method of querying that we'll explore is qSQL. Now qSQL allows us to query tables in PyKX while building SQL-like queries that PyKX actually submits for us under the hood. So qSQL has several different statements available to us, including the select statement, which is what we'll first explore right now. So the select statement allows us to retrieve and query specific data within a table, and we're able to define all sorts of awesome filters and manipulations within our select statements. So let's take an example of how we could actually do that. Now let's find all the dates where the closing price is greater than 73,000. And to do that, the syntax is quite simple and Pythonic. So what we can do is just say table.select, and then within this select statement is where we define all of our filters, group bys, and manipulations. So for example, we say where kx.column close, so where that closing column is greater than 73,000, and then we group by the date. So let's see what happens. We can run this. And we see really there's only two dates where the closing price is greater than 73,000 in this data set. That's pretty interesting. Let's take one more example. What is the average closing price of the entire table? And again, we have a similar syntax, table.select. Then we define our columns. In this case, we say we're interested in the closing column. .average.name. So what's interesting about this syntax is that you're able to take the column that you're interested in and then stack different manipulations on top of that. And we're doing that here by saying, okay, here we want the closing column, and then we're going to take the average of that column, and then the name that we want on that average is average close. So if we run this, we'll see, indeed, we get an output called average close with the average closing price across the entire tab BTC table. All right, so up next, go ahead and try exercise 12, where you'll look to return the total number of transactions where the volume is 0. So the next statement that we will explore is the exec statement. Now, the exec statement allows us to execute stored queries or dynamic queue statements upon our PyKX table. And we'll take a simple example to begin, where we just say table.exec. And all this is doing is helping us to select the last item of the table. So if we do this, we'll see we actually get the last item of the entire table. So this is an example of a simple stored procedure. So now let's take a look at a bit more of a complex exec statement. Here, what we're going to do is find the last closing price of each date. So to do this, we could simply say table.exec kx.column, the closing column, .last, so that means we're selecting the last item in the closing column, but we're grouping that by date. And then, of course, where ignore is false. So really all we're doing here is saying for each date, select the last item in the closing column. And if we run this, we'll see, indeed, we are able to select the last price within that closing column for each date. Now, let's look at the update statement. And what this is doing is allowing us to update certain entries within our PyKX table. The first task that we'll take on is to update the ignore column to true wherever the closing price is less than 5,000. So to do this, we'll take our table.update, set ignore to true wherever the close column is less than 5,000. We're going to run that. We're going to see, okay, so the first row, our closing price is indeed below 5,000. So if we scroll over, we see that the ignore column was set to 1 for this row. And then finally, we have the delete statement, which of course allows us to delete entries within our PyKX table. And to demonstrate this, we'll create a new column called test column, and within that column we'll put the string test exclamation point. And to take a look, we do indeed create that new column, and we're going to go ahead and delete that column. So table.delete kx.column test column, and then we say in place is equal to true, and that just means that when we run this statement here, it's actually going to be persisted onto the table. So if we run this, we'll see that yes, our test column was deleted. Let's just do one more example here. Table.delete where the closing column is less than 5,000, and that just means we're going to delete all the rows where that closing price is less than 5,000. So we do this, we can see, yep, the only rows left have a price of greater than 5,000. Okay, that covers the qSQL section. And next up, we'll be diving into the standard SQL interface with PyKX. We'll see you there.